Hi everybody. So this video primarily is going to clean up some of the issues that we had in the last video. The first issue I hope I cleaned up is the audio. I had to reset my computer and it reset a bunch of my audio settings that I didn't want it to do. I ended up kind of hurrying through the first bar of this piece at the end of the video, and there were a couple of issues there. But the other thing I did is I exploded it out into a saxophone section, so we can hear it a little bit more how it's going to be. I ended up choosing a soprano saxophone for the lead. Now on Sibelius, there's not a huge difference in the timbre of those two. I mean, I'm hoping that we can hear your sax projects live one of these days if we get out of this pandemic. But for now, we're going to have to just deal with hearing it on Sibelius. So let's just take a quick look at the sketch here. And so when we left off, there were actually a couple of repeated notes in here, some very awkward things, and it just didn't sound very good to me. So I ended up kind of fine-toothing that, and I came up with a strategy. So if this is something that you can, look at when you're writing melodies and harmonizing melodies. This melody here, I mean, it's just arpeggiating up the chord, right? So the apex of this melody here, we voiced as drop 2. So usually what'll happen is if you voice everything in the same technique all along here, it should work out well. The only caveat is that with this 5-way substitute lead, we don't always have an available sub for the for the first voice. So like for instance here, there was no sub for that first voice. So I started it out as a drop 2 voicing, came down here to the A, but then I went ahead and subbed in the 11 in the same octave as the 5, and you can totally do that. Now it creates a little bit of tension in the middle of this chord, and actually as I go along here, notice I keep doing that same sort of thing. Like here, I could have subbed that 11 down the octave, but then I would have gotten a repeated note, so I didn't want to do that here. So what I did is I subbed in the same octave for the root, and so I put the root and the 9 together here in the same octave. Did the same thing here, right? Root, 9, same octave, and then here I did it again. I did 11 and 5 in the same octave. Now this created some little clusters here in the middle, but I got to tell you, I really like the way that it came out, and I think it sounds pretty nice. Let me go ahead. I'll play the first 2 bars for you with the saxophones. Here it comes. I think that sounds pretty nice, right? I mean, you don't really notice those clusters. I mean, one of the reasons that is going to sound very nice is that all of the lines now, they're very smooth. One of the things I also did as I was putting this together is I went and, you can play individual lines, right? And you can go ahead and sort of play each line and listen to it and see, hey, is that something that, a saxophone player is going to really want to play? And so that kind of helped me determine some of the edits that I made to this. This bar here, I pretty much just left the same. This is one spot where I do have, in the tenor 1 part, I have one iteration of a repeated note, but he's just going to have to live with that because I think it worked out the best there. So that sounds pretty good. Let's go down here now. I changed a few things here. First thing, I wasn't really happy. If you remember in the last video, I tried to do a lower, upper, lower approach to this voicing here. And, when I listened to it back, I just was not super happy with the way that sounded. It didn't really establish for me the sound of that C13 chord. So I decided to voice these 2 notes here just as C13 sharp 11. This one here I had to play with a little bit. I decided to go ahead and voice it just in drop 2. But then I subbed for the second voice instead of the lead. And if you look at this on the piano over here, you can kind of see why I did that. It ended up just giving a really nice establishment of a C7 chord with a sharp 11 in it. I have my root, third and seventh down low, and my two extensions up top here. So that to me really established that the sound of that. I mean, I could have subbed for that. I could have subbed for the lead down the octave, but I opted to go with this one. I think it just, like I said, establishes that tonality. And then here, I think it just made one difference in the voicing here. I mean, we tried to do a diatonic approach, and actually that sounded fine, but by changing the root going to the B flat here, I went ahead and just changed it to a 9. It's just a little bit more authentic sound of the C13 chord. The rest I left the same because I think that worked out fairly well. Then over here, I did find an error. Oh my God, I make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes, but that's the thing. You can find them and you can correct them, right? So, by really listening to each line, and I found this mistake by listening to the individual lines, and I heard that from here to here, the second voice actually had a repeated note. So I had mistaken this as a G natural when it's actually a G flat, right, carrying through the bar. So I fixed that line there, that chromatic line. And then the other thing I just changed here, the rest I left relatively the same, is instead of a B natural here, instead of a sharp 11 on this kind of high part of the line, it's an important part of the line. It's going to get a natural accent, right? Because it's boo-boo-dee, right? It's going to get a natural accent. So we want that to really please us. So I took out the sharp 11 and I just put in a natural 5. Just kind of makes it pop a little bit better. And then to cap things off here at the end, the other thing I decided to do was, since this is sort of a cadential area here, is make it a little bit more final by making this last voicing here actually a spread voicing. So it gives us that root down in the berry. So let's go ahead and play it from here and see what you think. Yeah, I mean, it's very dense sounding, but I feel like, at this point, the harmony is quite clear. All of the inner lines, with the exception of this one little thing here, this one little repeated note, I think they all sound really nice and they're all quite playable. Once again, you might not be able to get every single line, with moving lines, but, play around with it. Maybe if I spent a little bit more time here, I could have fixed that. The only problem is it's going to affect whatever I do here is going to affect these two voicings here. So I didn't want to get too much into that. So we're going to just live with it for now. Let's hear the whole thing so you see what y'all think. Yeah, so I think it's really nice. It's 5-way density, very crunchy. However, I think it's really outlining that chord progression well, and it's fitting in with that melody very well. So I hope you think so too. I'm going to go ahead and post a PDF of this on Canvas, and you can use it for study. I'll leave it transposed because you can just look at the sketch to figure out some of the stuff that I did there. All right, see you next time.